Welcome, and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode until the question-and-answer session of today's conference. At that time, you may press star 1 on your phone to ask a question. I would like to inform all parties that today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the conference over to Mr. Cody Dietrich. Thank you. You may begin.
Hi, and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. This is Cody Dietrich with the U.S. Commercial Service. I work out of Washington, D.C. The U.S. government funds a lot of programs to assist U.S. companies sell their products and services in foreign markets. We are hosting this webinar to educate members of the Turkish Contractors Association on how they can benefit from these programs as well. If you are looking to outsource the design or construction management of a project, the U.S. Embassy can connect you with U.S. firms who are ready to provide you with the technical expertise. U.S. government financing can help you fund international projects. There is even a U.S. and Turkish Exim Bank co-financing agreement to help fund projects. And there are Millennium Challenge Corporation projects that focus on construction. If you are looking to win a contract from the U.S. government, partnering with a U.S. firm can help you meet content requirements and fill capabilities gaps. More information on U.S. government assistance and how Turkish firms can take advantage of this assistance is available at our many U.S. commercial service events. A great upcoming event where you can meet face-to-face with representatives from associations of today's webinar is Discover Global Markets, Design and Construction. This event will take place in the United States, Kansas City, Missouri, April 30th through May 2nd, 2018. This event will connect you with U.S. firms who can fulfill your capabilities gaps and diversify your supply lines. More information about Discover Global Markets, Design and Construction will be presented at the end of today's webinar. I will now turn over the microphone to Bill Sakowski at the U.S. Embassy in Ankara and Haluk of the Turkish Contractors Association.
Thanks, Cody. This is Bill Tchaikovsky. As Cody mentioned, I am the commercial counselor at the American Embassy in Ankara. First off, I would like to thank the Turkish Contractors Association for being such a good long-term vital partner for our office here in the embassy. They have been an amazing interlocutor for us. In particular, I'd like to thank Haluk Bey. Hopefully he's on the line now, and Haluk Bey's team also for providing us this opportunity to connect with you all this evening in Turkey and the morning in the United States. Today we have several amazing subject matter experts on the line who will talk about numerous ways to do business with the United States. And I'd ask you all to save up your questions for a question and answer session that will take place later in the program. Our office here, the Commercial Service Office in the American Embassy, we also offer strategic services to bring American and Turkish firms together. That takes many different forms, whether it's what Cody mentioned, the Discover Global Markets event, our Select USA Summit, or various programs that we do here in Turkey. Our objective, what we try to do every day, is to bring together American and Turkish firms so they can do business together. That's the bottom line, is a win-win situation for both Turkish and American firms. We are here to further enhance the bilateral trade relationship by identifying opportunities for Turkish and U.S. companies to work together. We encourage you to reach out to our team here, the Commercial Service Turkey team, to continue the conversation about doing business with U.S. companies. Once again, it's a great honor for me to be participating with the Turkish Contractors Association. And if Haluk Bey is on the line, I'd like to turn it over to him for his welcoming remarks as well.
Okay, and then if
I'm not sure that Haluk Bey is on the line. I'll leave it up to you, Cody.
Okay, hello once again. This is Haluk Büyükbaş. I'm the Secretary General of Turkish Contractor Association. These are the association of the well-known big international companies of Turkey. So it's a pleasure for us. We are trying for the first time, so I'm a little bit late to join, but I'm sure that this webinar meeting just to get information about the U.S. market and inform about our capability of Turkish contractors in the international arena. So this will be the first time, but it will be, I'm sure that will be a fruitful meeting for all parties who are joining. So to get acquired about the U.S. market, the capability of U.S. firms, design, contracting, material side, and also will be a fruitful meeting for our member companies to be acknowledged, to be informed about the U.S. market. So what can I say? I can only wish you a fruitful meeting for all parties joining. Thank you. Now, I think I should give the floor to the first speaker. So thank you once again. Okay.
So our first speaker will be Ross from ISI Consulting.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Ross Ensor from ISI Consultants. And we are a company based in Washington, D.C. That supports U.S. companies doing business outside of the United States. We do a lot of work with design and construction companies around the world. My background personally, I have over 20 years working internationally, most of which was in the design and construction industry. And my former position, I ran the international division of one of the top 10 U.S. design firms. And in that capacity, I worked with a lot of Turkish construction companies in Turkey, but also in North Africa, the Middle East, Eastern Europe. And so I want to talk about some of the benefits of partnering with U.S. companies on projects internationally. So one of the first benefits is that the perception of U.S. companies is very strong. So it can help with winning tenders or bids in a lot of countries. A lot of the U.S. companies tend to feature in worldwide rankings of projects, and they feature very high in those rankings, and that can be a huge benefit when working to try and win projects. But as well as the reputation, they also have very strong capabilities. So the expertise of U.S. firms can be very specialized. So a lot of the U.S. design firms, for example, will have a very large portfolio of hospital projects or airport projects, these sort of large, complex project types, which can be helpful in both winning projects, but also in completing them, because they can have 20, 30 or more projects that they've done, and the experience and lessons learned from those projects can be very helpful on your projects. Because of the size of U.S. architectural firms in particular, they tend to be very large, a lot larger than perhaps you're used to in the Turkish market or in a lot of other international markets. And that gives them the ability to staff projects with a dedicated team, which can be very helpful for coordination. In the firm that I worked with, for example, we had over 1,200 designers, and so we were able to put a dedicated team together for each project. U.S. design firms often also have a lot of experience and knowledge with building information modeling, or BIM, which is increasingly becoming a requirement on a lot of projects. They also provide multidiscipline teams. So as well as providing architects, for example, a lot of design firms will have mechanical engineers, structural engineers within the company, or will be working with those specialties right from the very beginning, which is a very good way of doing a project so that you don't have to revisit some of these design features later on and rework the project. So a lot of that is incorporated right from the very beginning of their designs. And then also a good capability is, because of the time difference, working on projects with U.S. firms, you can actually leverage and use that time difference to your advantage by handing off work at the end of your day in Turkey to the U.S. Design company. They can continue working on that and then send updates on projects for you in the morning. So you don't quite get a 24-hour workday, but it's a much longer workday because of the time difference. Some other advantages: U.S. design firms obviously have very strong relationships with U.S.-based clients. So if you're working on hotel projects, for example, they have potentially good relationships with Marriott or Hilton, some of the large hotel chains out of the United States, as well as big U.S. corporations and with the U.S. government. So it can be very useful on U.S. government projects as well. Another advantage of working with U.S. companies is their ability to attract not only U.S. financing, but also financing from Europe. I've worked on a number of projects where European banks looked more favorably on investing or loaning money on a project because of involvement of U.S. firms in the project. It can also, as you'll hear later in the webinar, fulfill some of the requirements for U.S. government funding on projects as well. So it's a good advantage of teaming. And the size of some of the U.S. firms allows them to sometimes help with bank guarantees or bonds on projects, and they cover very extensive insurance. And I've seen that as a big issue when working on these large international projects to ensure that you have the right bank guarantees and insurance on these projects. And then lastly, one of the big advantages of working with U.S. firms is the support of the U.S. Commercial Service and other government agencies. U.S. government does a lot to help support U.S. business internationally. And so there's a lot of programs that U.S. companies can tap into. For example, I've worked with an architectural firm, and we did a very large event at the U.S. consulate in Istanbul, and it was attended by a lot of people in the construction industry that we wanted to meet. It was a great way for us to get to know the market, and that was supported by the U.S. government. So that's something, by teaming with a U.S. company, that you can also take advantage of. Next slide, please. As well as the advantages of working with U.S. companies, I also wanted to just talk about a few tips from my experience working on international projects and how how best to work with U.S. design firms on projects. So one of the things to keep in mind is U.S. design firms can be more expensive. And I know that it's very important to be competitive on your costs, particularly on a design-build project when you're bidding, and it can be very cost-sensitive. So oftentimes people will combine the capabilities of a U.S. design firm with a Turkish design firm or a local design firm in the country where the project is. And that's a very good idea to keep the cost down. However, what I would advise is not to do that where you just put the U.S. design firm on concept design only. And that's something that for a lot of U.S. design firms, they may be less interested in the project because there's not enough scope for them. But there's also concern over their design and reputation being carried forward in the project if they just leave the project after the initial concept design. So it's very important to get them involved in later stages, but also to get the local design firm or Turkish design firm involved from the beginning as well, so that they understand why and how the concept has come together. And that way, this great concept that you're going to pay for gets carried through to the later stages of the project. Otherwise, you get a concept design that sometimes in later stages of the project gets ruined or lessened in value. So I've given a little chart below which shows what I tend to see as a typical example of working on international projects with a U.S. firm and then a local Turkish firm on the projects, and how to sort of split the scope. And I think it's very important to keep the U.S. firm in the project through concept design, schematic design to a certain extent, particularly for exterior work, facades, which can be a little bit more complex, and they use sometimes different technologies or ideas, if you want to keep that design intent through the project. And then keeping them on through design development as an advisor to make sure if there's any questions or issues as that project gets taken through to construction documentation. Again, I want to emphasize using the time difference as an advantage can be a great way of maximizing the time on a project. And I would also advise to clearly define the scope and payment terms up front when you're working with a U.S. company, because sometimes it is different. How they define schematic design or concept design can be different from how it's done in international markets. And payment terms can also, or expectations on payment terms can be different as well. In the U.S., for example, a lot of payments on architectural design is done on a monthly basis, so you're paid monthly, whereas internationally it's generally done on a phase or a part of the scope basis. So all of those things are important to get clear up front. But I think my experience shows that it can be incredibly beneficial and successful when you combine the expertise of the U.S. firms with the capabilities of Turkish construction companies and Turkish or local design firms. And that concludes my presentation.
Good morning. This is Rebecca Smith. I'm the president and owner of the A.D. Morgan Corporation. We're a 30-year-old construction management firm. And what we wanted to highlight today was what are some of the benefits and differences working in the United States and how we deliver construction, and some of the elements that may be very helpful moving forward as projects in third countries are built in a teaming capacity. To begin with, let's just talk about the difference between a general contractor who would build a building in a safe, quality manner and turn over a project for a lump sum total cost. What's happened in the United States and what many of the clients today are looking for is something that is more like a construction management delivery system where there are many more levels of accountability, transparency, interactive data sharing throughout the project, and more of a team delivery during construction. So the benefits of targeting reputable smaller to mid-sized partners in this kind of a relationship really provides Turkish companies the opportunity to meet companies that are more inclined to have a greater shared interest in the teaming concept. Sometimes larger companies don't present the flexibility to be able to really team like mid to smaller size U.S.-based firms may offer. Next, I really want to highlight the difference between just a general contract lump sum delivery, which is to build a quality project, versus the project management and total expertise delivered in a team kind of delivery as described previously. So project management expertise and scheduling expertise becomes very important when you are educating and maintaining communication and status awareness to all of the team members. So strong project management leadership and supervision is key, as well as having the opportunity to understand the local trade market so that their information and data can become part of that transparency and data sharing across all members of the team. And when we say members of the team, it's the design and engineering team. It's obviously the owner, stakeholders, the construction partner, as well as all of the trade contractors on the site. Transparency has become key and required by so many of our clients that they want to have real-time access to all project reporting. That's financial as well as construction progress. So we work more with a level of transparency, inviting them to the details, as compared to construction that maybe 30 years ago would have not shared that kind of data. It was pretty much obtain a contract, agree on a sum of money, agree on a completion date, and turn the project over at its final end. I'm describing something that's entirely different. Again, restating, construction as we know it is still the same. The delivery method, again, keying on the level of management interface, transparency of data, and how that is shared is taking a much higher level of priority with the users, the owners in construction delivery. To that end, project coordination and data management requires all levels of software and technology. It eliminates the conflict of data sharing. It enhances efficiency throughout the construction phase. That, again, to Ross's point, using the 3D modeling BIM software, all levels of project management and scheduling software, and a connectivity that, again, is real time. So imagine that instead of building a building behind a veil and delivering it 15 months or 25 months later, now is a team shared process where everybody logs in and can read interactive correspondence between subcontractors, the construction manager, the owner. There may even be a finance entity that is logging in to look at the progress of the project. That really speaks to the demands which ultimately are defined by accountability. In order to have complete accountability, there has to be transparency. The accountability not only has to cover the quality control and quality assurance by making sure that your process of building reveals the safety, code enforcement, all of the requirements that really contribute to a successful project, but the element of deficiency notices and enforcement of requirements, again, has to be revealed and made available to the team for accountability to give assurance to both team members, subcontractors, the architect, the engineer, as well as the owner. Everybody who has their name associated with the project feels 100% assured that the project that they are delivering stands up to all levels of scrutiny with regard to integrity. So in summary, buildings are built as they have been for years. What makes the inclusion of a U.S.-based company potentially that much more attractive to Turkish companies is how the interface with owners and the design team have taken on a new level that includes a tremendous amount of transparency, utilizing technology for the sole purpose of accountability. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Thomas, and I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for the Export-Import Bank of the United States. And I'm going to touch very briefly on a number of ways that EXIM supports the type of projects that we're talking about today. First, EXIM provides support for U.S.-based business in several ways, including providing working capital loan guarantees. A working capital loan guarantee is a guarantee by EXIM to a commercial lender, and the commercial lender then makes a loan to an exporter to purchase or manufacture goods and services for export. And there are a number of ways that an exporter can use the funds obtained through a working capital loan guarantee. And those ways include being able to pay for labor, materials, and overhead to manufacture goods or services for export. The funds can be used to pay off existing lines, and the funds can also be used for bid and performance bonds. And if you use the funds for a bid or performance bond, you only need to collateralize that bond at 25%. Meaning that if you're being required to put up a bid bond of $5 million and you are using a working capital loan guarantee through Ex-Im Bank, you would only need to collateralize $1.25 million of that bid bond, freeing up almost $4 million for your company to use in other ways. Export credit insurance is the second way that the Export-Import Bank supports U.S.-based businesses. Export credit insurance is an insurance policy, much like you have an insurance policy on your home or on your car, only in this case what you are insuring are the accounts receivables generated by international sales. The benefits of export credit insurance are threefold. First, you mitigate the risk of non-payment by your international buyer. Second, and with export credit insurance and knowing that your accounts receivables, your foreign accounts receivables are covered, you are empowered to negotiate competitive sales terms. And third, it helps you expand your borrowing base. So if you go to a bank for a loan and you have foreign receivables and those foreign receivables are not insured, your bank is not likely to include those in your borrowing base. Conversely, if you have foreign receivables that are insured with export credit insurance, then your bank is likely to include those in your borrowing base, and therefore you have access to additional liquidity. And a third way that Ex-Im helps U.S.-based businesses is by guaranteeing financing to creditworthy foreign buyers, both in the private and the public sectors, for purchases of U.S. capital goods and services. With an Ex-Im loan guarantee, your foreign buyers are able to obtain competitive term financing from lenders when financing is otherwise not available. These medium-term loan guarantees are particularly suitable for the type of large-scale projects that we're talking about today that involve the export of high-value capital equipment or services. There are currently about 196 countries in the world, and Ex-Im Bank is open in over 180 countries. You can go to exim.gov, our website, and search for the country limitation schedule, and that will give you country-by-country information of how we're doing business in each country. Projects that we have supported in Africa in the past include financing construction equipment for large projects in Cameroon. We have also supported a company that implemented a series of bridges throughout sub-Saharan Africa in Cameroon and Zambia, where bridges were needed to link commercial routes to underdeveloped areas, and we support a company that uses heavy dredging equipment. I've been asked to touch on how Ex-Im supports non-U.S. companies that are working with U.S. companies. We recognize that prime contractors will sometimes need to subcontract part of their project, and we support a U.S.-based prime contractor subcontracting up to 30% of the project to a non-U.S. company. The last thing I will touch on today is that in April of 2016, the Export-Import Bank of the United States and the Turk Ex-Im Bank signed a co-financing agreement. And the purpose of this agreement is to support sovereign construction infrastructure projects that include U.S. capital equipment being used by Turkish construction companies in Turkey and throughout the greater region. And I would invite you all, if you have any questions, to please contact me. My email is at the bottom of the slide. That concludes my presentation.
Hi, my name is Grant Knutson. I'm with the Millennium Challenge Corporation. Millennium Challenge Corporation, or MCC, is an independent U.S. foreign aid agency charged with reducing poverty through economic growth. MCC works exclusively with eligible low and low-middle income countries. Countries become eligible for MCC compacts by demonstrating sufficient capacity across 3 different dynamics: rule of law, support of economic freedom, and investing in their people. Some unique features of MCC's modern approach to development assistance include investment in projects with a clear economic return, a strict 5-year timeline for implementation, adherence to measuring results of those projects and incorporating those findings in future project development, and country ownership. So in all of our MCC-funded opportunities, the country is tasked with developing a government entity to implement that project and facilitate contract awards and management. MCC grants are given in the form of compacts and threshold programs. MCC compacts are large 5-year grants for selected countries that meet that stated eligibility criteria. MCC threshold programs are smaller grants for countries that are nearly eligible for MCC compacts. Much of the threshold programs are directed at policy reform, but often include some infrastructure investment as well. Currently, 60% of MCC's investment portfolio is in the African continent. MCC programs underway in Africa currently include Morocco, Senegal, Burkina Faso, Liberia, Ghana, Niger, Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, Tunisia, and Lesotho. There's also 3 threshold programs, Sierra Leone, Togo, and the Gambia. And across those compacts, a number of sectors are represented, including energy, agriculture, land, water, irrigation, education, and transport. Typically, these grants are used for large transformative infrastructure projects in those sectors. So think transmission lines or school construction, water treatment plants or pumping stations, highway development or rehabilitation, airports, etc. Some top reasons to do business with MCC include payments are made directly by the U.S. Treasury. There's no intermediary at the partner country level that takes charge of those funds. It's directly from the U.S. to the contractor. Procurement processes establish a fair playing field. There's no nationality preference. We use independent evaluation panels, international publishing requirements for opportunities, and independent procurement agents to facilitate the full procurement and contract administration processes. Winning contracts are priced reasonable. We typically make sure that a price that's offered can be reasonably done with the market provided. Prices that come in too low or too high are rejected. Government-owned enterprises are not permitted to receive works contracts. International environmental and labor standards are strictly enforced in those contracts. And past performance and references are heavily considered in the evaluation process. Non-U.S. companies can work with other firms to compete for MCC-funded contracts by meeting potential partners at various MCC or MCA outreach events. MCAs are the partner country entities that are tasked with implementing these projects, and they're required to have at least 2 major outreach events, once at the beginning of the compact and once 2 to 3 years into implementation. And MCC ourselves hosts a number of outreach events throughout the year, and those are advertised through mcc.gov. We invite contractors to search out opportunities published on mcc.dgmarket.com, UNDB, and the compact websites, as well as mcc.gov. You'll be eligible to meet with potential partners at pre-bid conferences for all of our major procurements. And we've also begun to have our MCAs develop partnership pages on LinkedIn and Facebook to further engage the potential contractors for their various procurements and allow them to introduce themselves to one another and facilitate those partnerships. A couple of notes that may be of interest to bidders. MCC-funded projects use FIDIC-based contracts and bidding documents similar to those used by the World Bank and other multilateral development banks. For bidders considering partnership opportunities, in cases where a subcontractor will be completing 10% or more of the contract, that subcontractor would need to be named in the bid and would also need to undergo an independent eligibility check to be performed by the MCA or our partner country accountable entity. There are regularly construction opportunities named in our 12-month forecast, which is available at mcc.gov. A quick look, for example, shows that we have a building construction opportunity for a national dispatch center in Benin, and roads construction opportunities are being published and are expected to be released over the next year in Niger. So I would invite all attendees to go to MCC's website to review the 12-month forecast and search for any opportunities that may be of particular interest to your firm. Website is www.mcc.gov/workwithus, and that concludes my presentation.
This is Steve Miller with Select USA, the U.S. Investment Promotion Agency. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. I'm pleased to be with you today. Just to share a few words about Select USA's mission, which is to promote and facilitate business investment into the United States. We're the single point of contact at the national level for international companies looking to invest in the United States. And we work with all of our sub-state, the state, regional, metro governments on investment attraction. And many of the states and communities, counties, and other jurisdictions are very involved as well in the investment promotion efforts of the United States. We work primarily with two sets of clients: international firms who are looking for business opportunities into the U.S. to be present in the U.S. market because of its size, because of its dynamism, and other factors like that. The U.S. is an export platform to the Western Hemisphere. And then we also work with U.S. states, cities, and regions to support their investment promotion activities abroad. Our diplomatic platform at the embassies and consulates is led by our commercial service colleagues, but we also work with state econ officers and others in markets where commerce doesn't have a presence. Turkey is the 9th fastest growing source of FDI into the U.S., and it's been a pleasure to see that grow over the last several years, with a current stock of about $1.2 billion of foreign direct investment into the United States. Top sectors for investment include metals, consumer products, and textiles. And we've seen a broad range of Turkish investment in lots of different regions of the United States. Just two brief examples that I want to cite from the construction sector in particular is that, and again, we operate on the basis, I'm sure like many of my U.S. government colleagues, on the basis of business confidentiality. So I'm going to give some examples but not cite specific names. But a Turkish architecture firm opened a New York office this past summer with about a $5 million investment and creating 16 jobs, looking to take advantage of the U.S. market as a place to grow. Turkish construction materials firm opened up a couple years ago in Indiana with about a $10 million investment that's creating 70 jobs. And so we've seen examples of where Turkish firms that really, for them to be truly global players, need to have a North American presence. And we, of course, want the United States to be the destination of choice for international investment. I would also just say a few brief words about infrastructure investment opportunities. Certainly, the folks may be aware that the U.S. has an interest in renewing its infrastructure, and there are potentially lots of opportunities. Though that, so I would say, is a long-term proposition, and that firms obviously need to be present in North America to ideally take advantage of those opportunities. And there's some organizations like the National Governors Association that has been tracking sort of potential projects that are priorities for each of the states. I'm not going to get into this in this presentation here, but you should be aware that a lot of the procurement for construction in the U.S. happens not necessarily at the federal level, but really at the state and local level. So engaging in the U.S. market requires an analysis of where you want to be located and what partnerships may be most relevant for you. But I would say that the NGA is a group, the National Governors Association is a group that Select USA is working with in particular to talk about investment opportunities and ways to engage on infrastructure. I wanted to highlight two upcoming events. I think you'll hear more about the Discover Global Markets effort in Kansas City, where you'll have the chance, obviously, to meet with folks in that region to talk about investment. But also our anchor event for investment promotion in the United States is the Select USA Summit, which happens in Washington, D.C. in June 20th to the 22nd. We welcome you to come. We've had very good participation from Turkish investors in the past. Bill and his colleagues there we'll be putting together a good delegation. Our Select USA lead in Turkey is Gökçe Tunçer. Her email, I think, is on there, so we'd invite you to get in touch with her or any of the commercial service colleagues if you are interested in joining that mission. So that is happy to take any questions later on, but that concludes the presentation on Select USA now.
Hello, everyone. This is Matt Baker. I'm the director for the Global Design and Construction team within the U.S. Commercial Service. And obviously, based on the presentations today, there is a tremendous amount of opportunity for collaboration and work with U.S. firms. So I wanted to highlight how you can take the opportunities and make it a reality or potential next steps. The Discover Global Markets is really the flagship event for the U.S. Department of Commerce, and it's really about connecting U.S. suppliers to worldwide opportunities. And we invite the Turkish firms to participate in this Discover Global Markets event because it's an ideal opportunity to take advantage and build new businesses and partnerships with some U.S. suppliers, and we would be able to specifically target the needs of your firm. Don't think of this as a conference so much, but it's all about the business-to-business connection. The event is April 30th through May 2nd in Kansas City, and you might be asking, why Kansas City? I don't know Kansas City. I haven't been there. It's very central in the United States, but it's a very important location for the architecture and engineering and construction fields. It's one of the highest concentrations of employment in the sector in the entire United States, and it's number one in the country for sports architecture. So just to give that some context, all of the major Olympic stadiums, all of the major world sports stadiums have been designed by one of two U.S. firms, and both of those firms are located in Kansas City. So these firms have indeed vast global reach. I wanted to highlight also some things of interest specifically for the Turkish firms. So primarily on April 30th, we've set aside that entire day to train and teach delegates through really three distinct programs. And firms that join us at this event would be able to choose which one is appropriate for them. So the first part of the day would be trainings followed by site visits. The three options are cultural construction. So the firm I mentioned earlier, Populous, which was the designer of the Olympic stadiums, they're going to be taking firms through a training of sporting venues and cultural institutions, and then they're going to be able to take those firms after that training to their local soccer stadium that they have also designed and built. The second is a sustainability and resilience training. So we'll be looking at case studies on sustainability, planning for sustainability, and impact on urban growth, which is another tremendous area of expertise in Kansas City. Lastly, there is the option of working with engineering trends that are driving access to power in growing markets. And this is going to be led by event sponsor and a very key partner, Black & Veatch. And then after the training, Black & Veatch is going to take us to their on-site microgrid, which is a really great opportunity for firms. The second 2 days, May 1st and 2nd, is really all about meeting U.S. firms. And part of our goal here will be to review each individual Turkish firm's project needs or buying needs and match those needs directly with the U.S. suppliers. And we will arrange the meetings for you on site. Our goal is to provide you with as many opportunities to engage. A lot of the presenters that you have heard today, for instance, Millennium Challenge, will be at the Global Markets event. So we will have the largest collection of international trade agencies or international trade groups dealing with the international space at this one event. We will assign one member from our team to each of you, and that person is really going to be able to go out, find the U.S. companies that will match your needs, bring them to the event, and then be able to meet with you directly at the show. You can see here at the bottom of the slide, there's more registration information. There is also agenda information at the link, but certainly your contact Yaprak there in Ankara would be able to answer any questions or provide clarification on any of the things that you've heard here today. Want to also highlight for our international executives, there is no cost, and it will also include breakfast, lunches, and access to all of our site visits, networking receptions, and so on. That concludes my presentation.
Hi, this is Sherry Stout, the Commercial Attaché at the U.S. Embassy Commercial Service Office in Ankara, Turkey. We hope that you enjoyed listening to the presentations today. We would like to thank the Turkish Contractors Association again for providing us with this opportunity to connect with you today as well. We would also like to thank our U.S. colleagues, Cody Dietrich and Matt Baker, for their work on organizing this webinar. Our mission is to connect U.S. companies and Turkish companies. Therefore, please do not hesitate to contact us whenever there is anything that you might need our assistance with. And I am Yaprak Çakılcıoğlu, commercial specialist covering construction sector at the U.S. Embassy Commercial Section in Ankara. So I am your first point of contact in our office, and we would like to organize a delegation formed by the members of the Turkish Contractors Association to U.S. around the Discover Global Markets event in Kansas City. Matt mentioned all of the benefits about the event. We would like to add one or more stuff in order for you to get the most value out of this U.S. visit. During this trip, you can further learn about the prospective projects in U.S. in order to explore the potential of starting operations in U.S., meet with U.S. companies to discuss cooperation in U.S. and third countries, meet with government officials, and join site visits. So we can create a customized program with the association's guidance and feedback from the members. Before the question and answer session, in order to receive the initial interest for this delegation, we would like to start a poll now. Cody will give the details on how you can share your interest in participating in this delegation.
Yes, so those members on the phone, if you are interested in learning more about the Discover Global Markets Design and Construction event that's been discussed here at the end of this presentation, please press star and then the number 1 on your phone now so we can see the level of interest in participation in this event. Please do so now. And then is the operator on the line?
Yes.
Okay. Could you please clear the list, and we'll move to the question and answer session. So we'll give attendees of this webinar the opportunity to ask any questions that they have. So I believe that the instructions for asking a question is to, again, press star 1, and then the operator can open the line, and you can ask the presenters a question.
While we wait for the first question.
Or you can also write your question in the chat box in your computer. Hi, this is Sherry Stout at the office in Ankara. I have one question for our colleagues at the Export-Import Bank. I think some of our Turkish companies who are participating in the webinar may have a question about how to find out more details about the projects in Africa that XM may be involved in. Is there a website or a way that they could find some additional information about that?
Hi, thank you, Sherry. This is Elizabeth Thomas at the Export-Import Bank. I would encourage folks who have specific questions to reach out to me. My contact information is on the slides via email, and I would invite anyone to please reach out to me with any questions that they have.
We have no questions on the line.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, if YAPREC or the Commercial Service in Turkey want to make any concluding remarks before we discontinue the webinar.
Sure, we're happy to do that, Cody. So we just wanted to thank everybody then for participating in today's webinar. We appreciate your support. Again, we welcome the opportunity to hear from you directly. Please feel free to contact YAPREC. I'm sure you have her contact information. And with that, if you are interested, this webinar is being recorded. I believe we will be able to share that information. So if there are colleagues of yours who are unable to participate, we will make sure that we can share that with the Contractors Association so that way we can distribute to colleagues and additional companies that may have been interested in participating today. Thank you again.
Okay, with that, this concludes the webinar, and participants can discontinue now, and I'll ask the operator to stay on the line for a readout of the report. Thank you.
Thank you for your participation in today's conference. Please disconnect at this time.